If FAMU wants to maintain their winning streak or even grab the small chance they have at a SWAC East championship, they got to have some consistency and play a complete game. And then also, Hampton gets their first CAA victory. Oh yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald sports editor. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Don't forget the S on the end. And then also, if you or someone that you know or love have experienced embarrassing sweating, then go ahead and get them to try Sweat Block. Save 20% with the promo code LOCKED on at sweatblock.com, and it's also available on Amazon. And I want to get into these Rattlers because I have some things to say about the Rattlers. I want to first talk about why I'm up in the air on them, but then also, do they have a chance at the SWAC East championship? Do they have a chance being the East representative in the SWAC Conference Championship? I'm not sure, but I'm going to talk about how they could do it. But first, we got to break them down as a team. Before anything else, we have to break them down as a team. And to me, I'm up in the air. I kind of feel like what FAMU has done this year has been slightly, maybe just a teensy bit overrated. Not saying that they as a team are overrated. Well, actually, I think I might be. I might actually be saying that. I've seen them places that I just don't feel like they belong, but we'll get into that at the back end of the segment. But I want to tell you why I'm so up in the air. It's because they haven't lost a game since week one. They played week 0 versus North Carolina. Then they played FAMU. Then they played Jackson State in week 1. They lost both of those games, but they've yet to lose since. It's a 5-game winning streak. When I see that on paper, I want to tell myself, shut up, Darian. Like, just leave it alone. Let it be what it is, a 5-game winning streak. Because you look at it on paper, and when I start saying I think I'm up in the air, it's like you're kind of nitpicking at this point. But I promise you that I'm not. I promise you I'm not looking for a way to devalue what FAMU has done this year, because I think that a lot of people get caught up in what the results have been. Winning is the most important thing, but I will tell you it is not the only thing. Winning is the most important thing because it ultimately is what determines your record at the end of the year, and your record is determines so much more, right? So that's what's the most important thing, but we're discussing a team. I'm not just going to discuss a team, say they won there, they won there. It's context. Having a conversation about them is more nuanced than just how did they win, or that they won. It's how did they win? What did they look like in a win? So that's where my conflict come from. What they've done versus how they look doing it. That's my problem with FAMU. You're in a 5-game win streak. Kudos to you. That's great. It's kind of hard to take away from it. But at the same time, it's hard for me to ignore the fact that I don't feel like you played a complete game for most of the year. For most of the year, you have not played a complete game, and that's an issue. Yes, five games in a row. That's great. But if you ask the team if they're happy with how they performed, I don't think so. I feel more confident saying that Willie Simmons would say no. I don't think he's happy with these performances. And quite frankly, I'm not either. So I kind of feel like GSP when he walked in the cage. I walk up to FAMU fans and you have a 5-game win streak, but I walk up to you like GSP and I say, I'm not impressed with your performance. Because you have to come back from behind against Alabama A&M. The next game, you beat Mississippi Valley pretty handedly. However, your coach calls out the offense for just not being consistent throughout the game. You be lying to yourself if you think they did that the next 2 games. They folded in the second half against South Carolina State offensively. I think that Grambling should have beat them, right? I think it was an overall sloppy game. But I think Grambling likely should have beat them. And when you want to, if you're just going to be completely honest, if they make the 2 field goals that they missed during that game, they do beat FAMU because the offense It just wasn't there. And I do think it was OPI by Grambling in the end zone, so I'm not bringing that into the reasons that they lost. No, I think that was the actual foul on Grambling. But as far as FAMU and what they can control, I thought Moussa had an efficient day, but I don't think the ball really moved up to their standard. You want more. You want more. Your coaches called it out, and I don't think you've answered the call since. So yes, 5 games is great. I kind of think you're skating by. Are you going to continue to be able to skate by? I don't think so. I'll be honest with you. I do not think you're going to be able to skate by for the rest of the year and win all of your games. I just do not think that's going to be the case. And honestly, the reason I even came with this overrated thing was because I see the top 10 list. I see the top 10 HBCU list, and they're pretty D2 heavy. Like the one I saw on ESPN with, I think it was the FAMU game, actually. It was either the FAMU game or the Southern game. FAMU was the 2nd ranked team in the SWAC, and they were the 10th ranked team in the country as far as HBCUs go. The only FCS HBCUs were Jackson State, of course, North Carolina Central, and then FAMU. I compare the Rattlers to Southern, and I have a problem ranking them above Southern. Right? They're above all the West teams, but I really have a problem ranking them above Southern. If we're just going to compare, the NCAA HBCU rankings have had Southern above FAMU for a minute. But some of these top 10 lists that I'm just seeing around that I don't know the name of, I'm seeing a lot of praise for FAMU. And until they put together a complete game, I don't think I can give them the same praise, though I feel like their talent does warrant it. So let's look at Southern. Because to me, Southern is being knocked for a bad performance. One bad performance. And why is FAMU not? Maybe it's because they lost to Jackson State and Southern lost to TSU. And maybe that's what they're looking at. You lost to a lesser team. Maybe. But outside of that bad loss to Texas Southern, they were supposed to lose to LSU. That's whatever. Outside of those 2 games, I can make an argument that every game they have been complete. They had 2 dominant wins. I even think they had a complete game against Alcorn. It's just that they didn't get the ball enough in the offense. The offense didn't get the ball enough to really show that. I kind of feel like it's an NA. It's not applicable. But whatever, if you don't want to take that one, that's fine too. But to me, they've been pretty consistent all year. They've been pretty effective all year. They've been playing complete games all year. And that's what I want out of FAMU. FAMU has the talent, 100%. But they have to be complete. Otherwise, I just don't see it. I don't see them being a top 10 team. I don't see them being better than Southern, right? Alcorn just lost to Southern, so we'll leave them out the conversation, and we'll just keep it Southern and FAMU. Luckily, we see these 2 face off, and these questions can be answered. But I need a little bit more consistency out of them. So if you're over here valuing the fact that FAMU is on a 5-game win streak, I completely understand. That's where my conflict comes from. They're on a 5-game win streak, and I want to give them complete credit for it. But I can't give them complete credit because when I look at how they played, I see their head coach calling out a problem that I don't feel has been fixed, and I just do not feel like they're playing complete offensive games. Defense is good. The offense is not being complete to me, and for that reason, I'm up in the air on just how much I can value them. And honestly, going forward, we're going to talk about this SWAC East championship, but they kind of making me sweat. And I don't know about you, but I hate when I sweat. I hate when I just have the noticeable sweat stain. It was the worst in college when you had the backpack and the mix of the heat. It was the worst thing ever. And I wish that I would have found Sweat Block at that time. It's so beneficial because I don't have to worry about these embarrassing sweat stains. So Sweat Block was created by a doctor because he had excessive sweating. Created by a doctor, recommended by a doctor. I'm recommending it to you. I might not be a doctor completely. I'm half doctor, maybe. I don't know. Let me not. Actually, I think that might be illegal. No, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a person who has tried this out and can tell you that it works for me. And if you or someone you know wants to try Sweat Block, you can get it at sweatblock.com and get 20% off using the promo code LOCKEDON. And if you don't go there, you can also go to amazon.com. As we keep on rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, we're still talking about them Rattlers. We're still talking about FAMU, but this time, instead of just talking about how I'm up in the air and kind of unsure on how I want to rank them or where I want to place them, I have a question for you. Can FAMU still win the SWAC East? Mathematically, the answer is yes. We're not talking about mathematically. We're being real. Take the numbers out. We're just talking about, can they do it? And I get this because I was looking at the NCAA rankings in which they rank number 5. That would be number 3 in the East. No, that would actually be number 4 in the SWAC 2 in the East. And they said how Jackson State needs to lose 2 games. So I ask you, and I want you to tell me, can FAMU win the SWAC East? The answer is yes. I just don't think it's likely. So don't expect me to come on here and just tell you that FAMU is going to win the East. I think they have a tall hill to climb. As a matter of fact, I don't think they're climbing it. I'll just be honest. But I do want to talk about how it could happen because it's not out the realm of possibility. I actually think that I might be on the side of feeling like it's more likely than others. I don't think it's going to happen, but I could see it more than I feel like others would be able to see it. And it's going to take 3 things. It's going to take 1, talent, 2, consistency, and 3, luck. Heavy on the luck. But the most important thing for us to start with is the talent. Because without talent, it ain't even a conversation. There's a reason that you don't even hear certain conference teams mentioned when talking about sports. You know, like just think to yourself, whoever you believe the bottom of the barrel is in whatever conference you want to think about, when was the last time you really heard about them? And this isn't just an HBCU thing. This is a Power 5 thing. This is a Group of 5 thing. This is a D2 thing. If you're at the bottom of a division or a conference, they ain't really talking about you for real. Maybe division in football because there's only 4. But you in the bottom of a 10-team, 6, 8, 16-team conference, nobody's really talking about you. Come on. There's certain teams who don't even get discussed here. FAMU has the talent to be discussed here. They're not the only team that isn't mathematically eliminated from winning the East, but I don't think we're having this type of conversation about other schools. I just don't. So with that being the case, I think Isaiah Land is talented. Isaiah Major is talented. I think the Bohler brothers on the outside at corner, talented, right? I think they have some good players, man. And they have another linebacker whose name escapes me right now. I think he's also talented. I think this defense is pretty good, honestly. And I think they've been pretty consistent. The offense, that little trio of Moussa, Smith, and Sheread, I think that's talented. Running game, I ain't about to hold my breath on that. Now, I'm just not, right? Because they've shown that they just have not been able to run the ball. And if they start running the ball consistency, it'll be a shock to me. But until then, I'll just be surprised. I'm not about to hold my breath, waiting for them to be able to do it. Turn purple and pink in it. I ain't finna do that. So with that being the case, that trio, I think that's nice. They have talent. They have enough talent to have this conversation. So now that that is established, let's talk about the next one, and its consistency. And that's really the theme for FAMU. FAMU has to establish consistency. And consistency can be consistency within a game, and that's playing a complete game. And then it's also consistently stringing together consistency together to having multiple games. That's what you're going to need. You have to play a complete game every single week. You can't just play a complete game every now and then. When I look at the rest of their schedule, I just don't think they can skate by. Let's look at who FAMU has to play. For the rest of the year, FAMU has to play UAPB. They have to play Southern, Alabama State, and then also Bethune-Cookman. So they have 4 conference games left. They might be able to slide by with UAPB. I ain't going to say might. I could see them sliding by with a strong half versus UAPB. Versus Southern, I think you're going to have to bring it all 60 minutes. Against Alabama State, I think you're going to have to bring it all 60 minutes. I don't care what Bethune-Cookman's schedule is or record is. That's the Florida Classic. You're going to have to bring that all 60 minutes. You cannot allow Bethune-Cookman to stay in the game forever with your own mistakes. Because in that type of environment, that's just not conducive to winning. That's how momentum starts going. I think that momentum builds faster in rivalries than any other game. So while Grambling might have taken a long time to build that momentum up, I don't think Bethune-Cookman will have to. So, and it only takes 1 loss. You have to win out. If Jackson State is going to lose this championship, right? Let's just say they're going to lose the division, not even just the championship, but the division is going to require FAMU to win out, period. That's the utmost. You have to win out because you can only take care of yourself. So you have to win every single game. But if you win every game, and I'm not saying they can't, I think these are all winnable games. I think they have a couple losable games, but I think they're all winnable games. Let's say they do win them all, and they win out the rest of the year. They only have 2 losses, and it's very similar to last year. where they just don't lose many games outside of Jackson State, and I think they lost one other game during the year. Yeah, it's going to need some luck at that point. It's hard for me to say because I just don't think it's likely, but the luck is going to come in the form of Jackson State losing 2 games. You're going to need that to happen, and I don't think it's likely. However, they do have, in my opinion, 2 losable games in a really good trap game. I'm a biased Texas Southern alum. However, I think that TSU will play them tough, kind of similar to Alabama State, but I do think they lose that game. But it's a trap game. It is a trap game, and I think it comes in between. I know it's after the Southern game, and I think it's in between that and Bethune-Cookman. So you might feel like you have an easy stretch. Maybe they're tired from the last week. I don't know. But TSU is a nice little trap game. Southern, they could lose that game. I do think that Southern is a pretty good team, and I think they'll give Jackson State a run for their money. It'll be fun to watch, but I think they'll give them a run for their money. To be very clear, I expect Jackson State to win out. I think they're the best team in this conference, and the best team in this conference means that they'll win the conference, and I think they'll beat everybody on their way there. I don't think they have to fall to achieve what they want to achieve. I think they win out. However, I do think that Southern is a game that could get them. I think Alcorn is a game that could get them. Though I don't expect it to happen, I'll tell you one thing I really don't expect to happen. Them to lose both of those games. Jackson State could lose to either one of those opponents. But I'm telling you right now, if they lose to Southern, they might beat every single opponent by 21 or more. Because the way that Deion Sanders works, you lose a game in the SWAC, screw the close games. He's probably upset about that. You lose a game in the SWAC, hell hath no hell hath no fury like a Jackson State scoring. Oh yeah, don't let them lose a game. Luckily, they lost in the Celebration Bowl last year because everybody was going to have to feel that fury if they hadn't. That's just my personal opinion because I think they have so much talent that if they lose, they're going to go and prove a point. They're going to hammer it home. I just don't expect them to lose 2 games this year. That's just me personally. Maybe one. And we'll see against Campbell. That's our game of the week. But I just don't think that they lose 2 games because as soon as they lose 1, they're on a mission after that. But that's what it's going to require. And that's why I don't think it's going to happen. And if that doesn't happen, I just don't see them making the playoffs. They've been too inconsistent throughout the majority of the season. They have not been as dominant as you would want them to be. I just don't think they've earned an at-large bid. I don't. Even if they win out. Maybe they go on a crazy run where they win 4 in a row by like 20 points, and I was like, okay, maybe we have a conversation. But as of right now, I don't see it. I do not see it. I want to see it because I actually like FAMU. I don't know why, but I gravitate towards the Rattlers. I like them. But if we're being realistic, I just do not see it happening. So can they win the SWAC East? Yeah. All these things have to go right. They have the prerequisite as far as talent goes. They got to establish some consistency so they can win out, and they need Jackson State to lose 2 games. Very unlikely, possible though, and we'll put it there, and we'll see what happens as the rest of the season goes on. But as we continue with Locked On HBCU, I'm going to switch gears and go to a completely new conference and one we haven't talked about in a couple of weeks. We're going to talk about Hampton because their upward trajectory in the CAA has continued, and right now, they just won their first win in the conference. Before we do that, however, I would love to tell you about LinkedIn. If you're a business owner, LinkedIn is the place to be. Matter of fact, it's not exclusive for business owners. It's also if you want a job. If you're sitting here trying to get a job, go to LinkedIn because the business owners that I'm telling them to go are going to be looking for people like you. It's a cycle and it works both ways. So let's go ahead and get her done, right? Let's go ahead and get her done. But here's the thing about LinkedIn. It's an unmatched tool where you can reach so many people. 810 million people are on LinkedIn, including this one right here. I got to update my profile, but it's a unmatched tool. It's going to help everybody. And no more going through the whole hiring process, trying to fill people out. Go ahead and holler at Jody, man. Jody is ready. Jody knows exactly what your company needs, and he's exactly what your company needs. Just go ahead and hire him because he is the man for the job. Make sure you add the purple hashtag hiring frame, and you can get in contact with the 40 million new job seekers who are on LinkedIn every single week. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you guys for keeping it rolling, keeping it going, because this is a machine and I'm shouting you guys out, every single one of you. I appreciate the love. Right now, I want to talk about Hampton because I think they're on a really good upward trajectory in a new conference. This is great, right? So this is their first year in the CAA, and you wanted to go better than the first year in the Big South. Not to bring up bad memories, I'm sorry, but they won one game in the Big South during their first year. They won one game already. And matter of fact, I like the trend that they're going. Every week, the games get better, right? Every week. And that's what you're looking for out of them. Cheers to them because I've seen progress. This is the epitome of positive progress to me. In week one, you get blown out. Let's rewind. Let's go through the whole season. So you have your first 3-0 start in, I think, like 13 years. It's a long time. But you start off 3-0 for the first time in forever. So your momentum is going. You're knocking off HBCUs. You beat your chest, young man. You know what I'm saying? That's what we're going through. You're feeling really confident. But then you hit Delaware and you hit a wall. However, that wall could be something you just hit, you get up, or it could be a momentum stopper altogether. It could be a momentum slower or a momentum stopper, right? So basically it's like this. You have people who hit hurdles when they're doing hurdles, right? Every game is like a hurdle. Let's say it like that. This is for my track people, right? Shout out my girl Red. That's my dog. Every game is like a hurdle. And sometimes you might nick a hurdle. But you have people who hit a hurdle and they just keep going. And you have people who hit the hurdle and their whole race is done. You don't want to be the latter. You want to be the former. Now, I'm going to send this to my friend, and I hope she says that I use that perfectly. And if I did, y'all send that to all your track and field friends, because I'm pretty proud I came up with that on the fly. But really, in all seriousness, that could have stopped a lot for them. They were riding high, and to get beat down the way they did because they got blown out, that could have stopped a lot, but it didn't. And this is what I mean when I say it's positive progress. Game one, you get blown out. Game two, it's a really close loss. You actually had the lead going into the fourth quarter and you give it up, but that's progress. You don't like it, but it's progress. And then in the third game, you come back and you win. So you go from a blowout to a close loss to a win. That's progress. That's what you want. And in a perfect world, it would set the Pirates up to really be a team that's going to be contending and competitive in this conference. I think that 500 is probably a really good marker. If they hit 500, they're going to have more wins in the CAA their first year than they had in the Big South their last year. They went 3-5 in the conference last year. If you can go 4-4, that's a really successful season. Like, you're taking that season 9 times out of 10. So I really would like to see that out of them. But let's talk about it because they're in a new conference. And they're also kind of passing the ball a lot more. And it comes with a lot of risk. It came with a lot of not so good. So you have more interceptions, but you also are on pace for more touchdowns. So both of those things are trending upwards. It happens, right? So it's more risk, more reward. I guess that's just what comes with the territory. And one person that's really benefiting from this increase in passing and probably helping influence the more effective passing game is Jadakis Bonds. Jadakis Bonds has been crazy. He's had 4 really good games this year, and he's averaging 15 more yards per catch. He already has 8 touchdowns this year. He had 6 last year. So he's having more than 1 touchdown per game at this point. This is a really reliable player, and I think he actually won the Draft HBCU East-West Shrine game. That's a mouthful, but I'm going to say it again because the Draft HBCU family has been good to me. He actually won, if I'm not mistaken, the Draft HBCU East-West Shrine game Offensive Player of the Week. This guy's been pretty good this year, and I think we need to make sure we're taking notice. I think that him and Bayshaw Tootin have been 2 of the better players who just have been standing out on their team, but they don't play in an HBCU conference, right? They really have been studs this year, though. But yeah, this trajectory is really good. And when you look at this game, instead of having to be the one who was the recipient of a comeback, now you're the one who's creating the comeback. You're coming back in the fourth quarter and winning this game in overtime. The final score was 38-37. So it's not really much defense being played. However, the defense was clutch when they needed to. Same with the offense, but let's highlight the defense first and just flow through offense the rest of the segment. Defensively, they actually stopped University of Albany on their last 2 possessions in regulation, and then also in the overtime session when they decided they wanted to go for 2, Albany said, you know what, we're not going to second overtime. We're either going to win right here or we're going to lose right here. Well, you lost right here because the defense of Hampton was the one that got stout, and they stopped that 2-point conversion that would have won the game. So they had some really clutch defense in a game where they probably weren't happy with their defense, but the way they closed out, I think is something that you can stick with, and it's something that can go into next week and possibly be a confidence builder. Now, when it comes to offense, this was probably their best game of the year. They had the second most points that they had all year, but this was the most yards they had all year. Had they made the field goal at the end of the game that would have won them in regulation, they would have scored on their last 6 possessions in a row, but they scored touchdowns on their last 5 possessions right before that of the game. So when you needed it, you went out and you got it. They kept Albany scoreless in the fourth quarter, by the way. So let's give another nod to the defense while the offense was doing their thing. Too often we see offenses start a comeback and the defense is kind of stout, but when they need to not be stout, they give it, or when they really need to be stout, they give it up. None of that. I thought that they played really well. But overall, this is the performance that you want. Blowout, close loss, win. We'll see what goes on in their 4th week of the CAA conference play. But I'm just hoping that they go 4-4 on the year, split it at 500, and I think that would be a good year. But I appreciate you for making us your first listen of the day every single day. On tomorrow's episode, we're going to be talking about some of the games of the week that did not make the cut, but there are still ones that you need to make sure that you're watching. Of course, our game of the week is Jackson State versus Campbell, but we'll break that down on Friday. For your second listen of the day, make sure you're checking out our conference shows. Friend of the show, Locked On ACC host Candace Cooper, of course. Locked On SEC, Locked On Pac-12, Big 12, and Locked On Sun Belt. So the Locked On Pac-12 host is actually also the Locked On Oregon Ducks host, and they had some really good news in the water cooler, so shout out to you, Spencer. But in the meantime, in between time, if you're looking for little old me, good old Darian, the mouth of the South, you can follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.